Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another edition of the Pro Take. My name is Brendan Yerkes, joined alongside Chris Mano for today, and it's an exciting time, especially on this show. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers and that saga for weeks, and now we finally have an end. Chris, Aaron Rodgers is a New York Jet. Still here with you on the Pro Take, talking some puck, and thank you to Greg Wyshynski for talking to me about the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was great to get to talk to him. So I'm here with Christian Gardecki and Harrison Leone to talk about these playoffs. And we're going to start out like we did last week, the Florida Panthers. We've talked so much about them. And how could we not, though? They went up 3-0 on the Maple Leafs, lost Game 4. They're up 3-1. And they have the chance to close it out tonight in Game 5. So, Christian, do we think they finished the job tonight? Now, in a pretty good position, obviously we had the NFL draft last night. We'll get to that in a little bit. We'll keep it on the Aaron Rodgers talk for now. So there's many ways to analyze the way the trade actually went down. So if you're looking at the compensation, the Jets swapped picks from last night's draft. They went from 13 to 15 with the Packers. They also got a fifth-round pick in the process. But going to Green Bay was a second-round pick next year, a second-round pick this year, the one from the Elijah Moore trade, a sixth-round pick, and next year a conditional second that could turn to a first if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. I don't think the compensation is that big of a deal because if you get Aaron Rodgers to play 65% of the snaps, which he probably will, then you expect the Jets to be in the playoffs, and that pick will be a late first-rounder anyways. I mean, I think it's a win-win for both teams if you look at it, because Rodgers was done with the Packers. The Packers get a first, they get a second, and then a second that's most likely going to be a first next year, so they get those 2 draft picks for Jordan Love. The Jets get the quarterback that they've been needing forever, since what? How long has it been? Are we going to say Joe Namath again? We know that Rodgers is 40 years old, but it doesn't matter. If he plays for 2 or 3 years and he's successful, they have a win-now team. So they can get it done, and I think it's a win-win trade for both sides. The Jets, you're not going to have a first-round pick next year most likely, but that's fine because, as we mentioned earlier, it's going to be later in the first round, and they have a real chance to go all the way. I understand the skepticism because he has been injured a lot the last 2 years, which is understandable. But the guy won an MVP. Like, if he's on the field, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And now, Zay Flowers, I was going to get to that. They also have Odell Beckham, and they have 2 wide receivers that they haven't had and they've been searching for a long time with him. They can make some noise in that division. Jahmyr Gibbs is a fantastic running back, but to be picked as high as he was, and rumors that they wanted to pick him at 6 as well, I don't really understand what they were thinking. They have Swift, and I know there's been some skepticism there, and they have enough running backs where I don't think drafting one that high was necessary. Maybe they should have focused on improving their defense, maybe getting another wide receiver, because Jameson Williams just got suspended for a while up there. So I think it would have been better suited for them to go in a different direction. Still a lot of guys that are pretty solid left on the board. Jets, I think they definitely should go offensive line, especially center for the interior, and maybe another tackle as well, because you can't have too much depth and just anywhere else. But I think a guy I'm looking at also for the Jets as a target in general, Brian Branch, safety in Alabama. He's a terrific player. I think a great prospect, one of the best ones still on the board. It's always great if you could draft well in the first round and get those. But who's been good for a long time, and who hasn't been good for a long time? Who's been good? The Seattle Seahawks. They always nail those late-round picks, and that's what they kind of built that Super Bowl team about 10 years ago on, consistently being good the years after that. And then you look on the flip side here in New York, the Jets. I don't want to bring back negativity, but they were struggled drafting in the first round. They had some guys that were okay for a little bit, then never really panned out. Their late-round picks most of the time were off the team within 2 or 3 years. That's not how you build sustained success, and that's why they missed the playoffs for so long. So I think you're starting to see that change a little bit with the new regime and all these teams that have been having so much success drafting in those later rounds. And we're going to have to see it the next 2 days, tonight and tomorrow, to wrap up this 2023 draft. Interesting to look at because the Eagles' 2 games, they haven't been in these high-pressure situations. They steamrolled the Giants, and then they had, the quarterbacks of the 49ers both got injured. So we don't know what they're going to be in a game where maybe it's a shootout and they have to go back and forth, or maybe, they face some adversity and say the Chiefs' defensive line, has a good game. They can get past that great Eagles offensive line. Is Jalen Hurts going to be running for his life? Because we know that's one of his biggest skill sets. But with passing the ball, as Harrison touched on, he hasn't had that great of a stats in the playoffs. He's done his job. Nothing stands out to me where Patrick Mahomes has kind of had to, with his ankle in the playoffs, step up and continue to do what he does with some adversity. I don't see a way that pitching staff, which is definitely not as good as last year's, I don't think, from a talent standpoint, can beat the Braves and win that division. The Mets had their chance to do it last year. They let it slip away, and now I don't see a way they catch up. And they're putting so much pressure on the shoulders of their 2 top prospects, in Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty. That's what they need in the worst way, because it's been so much inconsistency. Even with Max Scherzer, they haven't gotten Max is going to go out there and do his thing, and we're going to be safe for the night. Because you said it, those guys, David Peterson, he might have a great start one night, and then the next night he might only go 2 innings and give up 6 runs. You do not know what pitcher you're going to get. So having Verlander come out there stabilizes things. I think everybody can get a rest. Well, that's what it was in 2022, right? Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs. He was the offense.
Yeah.
And now you lose him, and you have all these other guys struggling. What are they going to do? And there's only one man that's kind of corralled the Yankees and been what he's had to be, and more than that is Garrett Cole. I mean, he is the only guy who's kind of consistently been great. Another terrific outing the other day. And what is the rest of the pitching staff going to have to do to be able to keep up with what Cole is doing? What's one positive thing? I can think of 2 positive things. Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty, and that's it. Those guys have been absolutely locked in lately, especially Alvarez. He hit 2 home runs in one game against Cincinnati the other day, batting .286 in his last 15 games. So he's really improved from a slow start. Beatty slowed down the past few days, but that weekend before he picked it up. And that's the whole thing. It's these younger guys that are providing a spark. And the guys that aren't getting it done, that have been there, you got Mark Canha, the designated hitter today. He's had a putrid season at the plate, and now he's DHing. You know who should come up? Mark Vientos. He's in the minor leagues. Service time shouldn't matter. If you're a team like the Yankees, they're talented enough where they could win. Go and try and win. Even though the Mets a couple years ago, they weren't that fantastic in 2019 to go win a World Series, but they brought Pete Alonso up and he set the rookie home run record. That doesn't happen if they leave him down for service time. Just go for it. My final take is I think this Edwin Diaz loss takes the Mets out of winning a World Series. I just don't see how they can go through a whole season in that division and win the World Series. He's just that important to the team. The bullpen last year, it was just the way it was set up. They had all these guys come in, and then Diaz shut the door every single time. It was not a doubt. He had so many strikeouts. I just don't see a world where they don't have Edwin Diaz to trust in that 9th inning and they can go out and win a World Series. My take is I think this year's class was a lot weaker than many of the classes that we've seen in previous years. And don't get me wrong, still some great players, a lot of talents, especially towards the top. But as you get down the first round, I feel like compared to especially last year, you saw so many impact players go deep that into that first round that it's just not as good. And I think you're going to see more of those diamond in the rough type guys come out and emerge as the faces of this draft class when you look at it back at it in a couple of years. I just don't think this class is as deep. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pro Take. Thank you to my co-host, Chris Mano, all of our panelists, Jalen Tart, Gabe Zoda, Will Schoenlieber, and our Eng assist, Ryan Resko. Thank you to our engineer, Emma Big. I'm Brendan Yerkes. Have a great night, everybody.